Greetings, Facebook family, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight for part two of my life, my story, my testimony with Apostle Ryan J. Fontenot. I want to remind you that this is a four-part exclusive that I'm going to be bringing to you for the entire month of May. So I invite you to share, invite your friends to join us. This is a night of transparency. What you're going to get is authenticity, and we want you to be a part of that. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you, Apostle. How
God
are you?
bless you. I am doing wonderful.
Good. I'm glad to be back here with you again.
Yeah.
And before we jump in, I just want to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
One of the questions is, it's a pretty general question. What would you say are your three top pet peeves?
Oh, my three top pet peeves. Disloyalty. I don't know if that is a pet peeve,
Mhm.
but I don't like that. Let's see another pet peeve of mine. Loudness. People who are just loud for no reason. And then another pet peeve would be repeating myself. I hate that. Repeat
That's one of mine.
myself.
That's
Yeah,
one of mine also.
yeah.
What do you like to do in your downtime?
Eat and go to the movies. That's really pretty much what I do. Or I like to practice on the piano every now and then too.
What's your favorite food?
Soul food. Any
Soul
soul
food.
food that I can get my hands on is my favorite.
Now, is Popeyes your favorite place to eat?
I love Popeyes. It's my favorite fast food chicken place. Put it
Okay.
that way. But not my favorite restaurant. I like Papa Do's.
Would you prefer oxtails over chicken, or is chicken your number one
Oh
over
man.
oxtails?
Putting them two together, I would prefer oxtails over chicken. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I know that we talked last week about your childhood, and we talked about a lot of the surface things, how you started in ministry early on, things of that nature. But we want to go a little deeper tonight.
Yeah.
So we're just going to jump right in and talk about the man. We're going to talk about who you are outside of ministry, outside of what we know you as apostle, as pastor.
Sure.
We want to find out more about you. And
Amen.
so the first question that I have for you is, why do you feel it's important to share your story now? Why now?
I think that given the last season of my life and some things that I went through, um, I was in a moment of life where it was left up to other people to tell my story
Hmm.
or to try to tell my story.
Hmm.
And so the narrative was controlled by their assumptions,
Hmm.
and the narrative was controlled by hearsay, lies, etc.
Hmm.
And so during that moment of my life, God really, it was actually before that, He birthed a passion in me to take control of my own story.
Hmm.
Nobody gets to tell my story but me. And so I felt it time to tell it because I've come through that season and have started some new transitions in my life and healing processes. And most importantly, I wanted to tell my story because I know I'm not the only one who's been through
Sure.
some of the things that I've been through.
Hmm.
And my prayer is that in me telling what I've been through and reaching this place of transparency and authenticity, that somebody is going to be blessed by seeing what I've been through and seeing how God brought me out of. So, yeah.
Amen. What would you say this call has cost you?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Everything,
Hmm.
everything. And when I say everything, I literally mean everything. It's cost me much. It's cost me a lot in terms of the normalcy of a life. I just don't have that.
Hmm.
And not just because of being in the public eye all the time, but because of the grace that's on my life, the type of call that I have. And so it's cost me a lot.
Is
What?
there a regret that comes to you because of being on a platform, because of being in the public eye? People are always watching you, always, looking at you. Do you ever regret that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not the limelight is not all that it's chopped up to be. It comes with great scrutiny. It comes with great agony. It comes with great pain. It's come with great misunderstanding, and so it's taken me a long time to get to where I am now. But there, even there now, there are days where I wish I could go someplace and nobody knew me, or nobody knew what I did in ministry or pastor and all that kind of stuff. So absolutely,
As
absolutely.
you continue to go on in the journey, do you feel that you have less than you did when you started? Do you feel that you've lost people? Do you feel like you're kind of in a thinning stage of your life?
I am in the last season of my life really afforded me the opportunity to see who was in my life for the right reasons. Because I think we know in ministry, people will get connected to you, but not for authentic reasons. And their connectivity to you is based upon what you can do for them or use whatever purpose you can serve for them. And so, the last season, the Lord has thinned a lot in my life. He's thinned tremendously in our ministry. And this is a place now where I believe I'm connected to genuine people, which is what I've always desired for. And I've learned that when you don't have the courage or the obedience to dismiss people out of your life who you know God has told you to walk away from or cut connection with, then God will do it for you.
Well,
And
that's
so
good.
he did it for me.
Did you have a hard time disconnecting and letting go
Oh,
of
absolutely.
people out of your life?
Absolutely. From friendships to members of my church, to, the relationship piece, marital piece, all of it. All of it was very difficult. Very, very, very difficult because this was my life for such a long time. And it just got hit and threw up in the air and overnight just went into straight warfare. And I'm human. And so sometimes I think we forget that as much as we are graced for mantles and all this wonderful stuff, that there's a human part to me and to everybody else who walks in ministry. And so while the spiritual part or the apostle or the man was strong, the human man inside of me was very hurt, disappointed, and all of the above.
Sure. And we're going to talk about some of those things that you mentioned later on. But I want to ask you well, actually, how would you define what a friend is?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think that a friend is an individual who can experience you at your highs, experience you at your lows, see your humanity, see your divinity or your spiritual part, still honor you, still respect you, and then, regardless of what happens in life, I'm there for you. You know,
Sure.
and for me, being a friend does not just mean we going out to dinner and movies and all that kind of stuff. To me, being a friend means you must have the ability to intercede for me and pray me through some stuff, and I will do the same for you. Does that make sense? So that's critical for me because of the measure of my call. I know that I need people connected to me who can pray me through.
Now, in knowing you, I know that you've experienced an extreme amount of betrayal in friendships that you have. Do you feel that that is an area of vulnerability for you? Sometimes maybe that's a blind spot for you.
That's a good question. Oh man, that's good stuff. I think that because I have the heart that I have for people,
Sure.
that um, my friendships, and I don't call many people friends, and
Sure.
I've never called many people friends, but that has been an area where I have not had the best experiences. Um, Many betrayals. many disappointments and stuff. So I think it was at one time a blind spot for me in a place of vulnerability. The place where I am now is not so much as now the Lord has taught me through previous friendships what true covenant is, which is what I desire. Just not, I'm not just your friend. I'm in covenant with you. I hope that
Yeah.
answers.
Is friendship necessary for you?
Um, you know what? Let me say this. I am not a person who I have to have a whole bunch of people around or friends around. I'm a loner. I've been a loner, all that kind of stuff. But I I've grown to understand and appreciate true friendship,
Sure.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, talking about you as a person, what has been your plight as a man? And at what point do you reach the solidarity of your identity?
Um, my plight well, that's a very good question. I think that through my life and my transitions, and through the experiences, ups, good and bad, um, that I've reached a place where I've concretized and come into the confidence of who I am as a man, and that hasn't always been. And so, if what in essence, what I'm saying is, there have been seasons where I've been a stronger pastor than I've been a real solid man. And so I've understood that some of the seasons that came upon me in my life, and some of the stumbling blocks and failures and mistakes that I had to go through, was because I was mature in a call, but immature as a man. And what the Lord really caused me to do in the last season was to address the man. And when I addressed the man in me, then God began to shift some things in my life.
Did you give yourself permission to be human? Do you feel like you were too hard on yourself, or when did you? Well, let's just start there. So, when did you realize that there was an imbalance in the man and between the man and the ministry?
I think I realized it when I was feeling extremely successful when it came to ministry things, and then I would go home and be completely miserable. And so I've always taught our our staff, our church, I don't want to be a public success and a private failure. And then the man and the man and the mantle were many times at war with one another, because the man in me is trying to convince the mantle in me that I'm not even worthy to carry it. And then the mantle in me is trying to tell the man in me, take a back seat, or,
Sure.
to grow up to the level of the grace of my call. And so at many times I was at war with myself for many years in ministry, pastoring, pouring into other people,
Sure.
and still having a war inside of me between who was I really, away from people and away from what I did as a result of what I was called to do. And I think the Lord just put a halt in my life and made me address everything about who I was as a man.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel at times that maybe you lost focus? Did you ever know when? I guess the best way to say it is maybe the anointing. Did you ever feel it lifting off of you? Did you ever feel dry? Did you ever feel like you were kind of going through a dry season?
Yeah, there were many seasons where I felt like I was just going through the motions. I knew ministry like I know the back of my hand. I know
Sure.
ministry. I know preaching. I know, just ministry, period. And so there are several seasons where I knew the Lord was distant from me. Because of decisions that I made, because of where I was at that time in my life, or because of things that I was struggling with or going through. I knew the Lord was distant from me, but I felt like I had to come in and still do what I had to do, which was preach, which was pour, which is make your face a flint. Don't let them look like what you don't look like what you're going through.
Sure.
Fake it till you make it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And for a long time, I think you asked, did I give myself permission to be human? And for a long time, I didn't. I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to live up to everybody else's standards of me,
Mm-hmm.
including my family, what I thought their standards were for me, my family, the community, my members, my children, all of those different things. I was trying to be what I thought people wanted me to be, and it ended up tearing my identity apart
Mm-hmm.
until God reconstructed who I was. When I had the courage to address who I was, because I was experiencing and living in the dispensation of a man inside of me that I knew I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did not want to rely on my gift and ignore what was going on inside.
Absolutely.
And I don't think the church gives many ministers, preachers, people in ministry the permission to address our
Mm-hmm.
humanity.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, if your humanity is displayed in the 21st century, then you have bloggers and writers and people, etc., who take or capitalize off of your humanity instead of saying that's a man
Mm-hmm.
or that's a woman. So, if that makes sense.
Which we will touch on a few of those things. But before we do that, what are some of the ugly things that have happened behind the scenes in ministry that you've experienced?
Broadly, I'll address it broadly, then I'll kind
Mm-hmm.
of narrow it in. Broadly, I think that growing up in ministry, I've been doing this for quite a while, and so I discovered that there was such a ugly side to ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say this: I am, if anything, I consider myself an apologist. In other words, I'm going to defend the church because
Yeah,
I believe the church is the answer. But I've been long enough in the church to know that as great as we are, there are some dysfunctions that we have,
absolutely.
and a lot of them stem from preachers who have not been processed through an identity
Mm-hmm.
period. And when you don't know who you are and you're trying to pour into other people, then you become one person on this pulpit and you
Mm-hmm.
become another person in the office. And there have been many office conversations down to the years that I've had that have left me shocked and saying, wait a minute, we just left a full service that was
Mm-hmm.
just full. You just got done speaking in tongues and laying on hands. And then it got in the office and it was just a totally different thing. So that the ugliness of ministry through that, through seeing the greed in
Mm-hmm.
ministry of pastors and preachers who come in just to raise an offering or just to take care of themselves, not really interested in pouring into ministry. I've seen the ugliness of ministry in terms of congregations in an uproar against each other. Um, I've seen the ugliness of ministry in terms of people who come together. It's interesting. You can't get the people to come together for a lot, but you can get people to come together to
Oh,
fight
absolutely.
somebody. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people come together and come against leadership. And so there's a very ugly part that I think God has given us the grace to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we've been taught that we can't really talk about that stuff. And we can't really, because we don't want to hurt the church or damage the church. But every family has dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our families grew up in dysfunction. And I had to grow and mature and decipher between all of that.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it hurt because I'm like, I didn't know none of this was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then it got to be how do I change it or how can I be different?
Sure. Now you are a husband and father, and you are the father of 5 children. Um, how has it been protecting them from the ugliness of ministry? How have they been affected by it?
Um, my children are still young,
Mm-hmm.
so the last season that we were in, probably they were affected by more than anything else that we've ever been through. But I think they're young at a point where I know they know or can discern what's going on, but not um, quite to the point where major expression as far as church. But for the most part, I continue to pour into my children on a daily basis. Let them know who I am as their father, so that they don't have to leave it up to anybody else to define me. And then secondly, let them know who they are as children, and do my best to be a father to them and raise them up as the best I know how.
That's good. Now, in part one, you talked to us about briefly um, uh, having a child out of wedlock. You got
Hmm.
married young. Do you regret getting married?
Um, I I don't know if the word is regret. I wish I would not have gotten married as young as I got married.
Mhm.
And the consequence of that, I think, is as a result of listening to church people or people who thought that that's quote unquote the right thing to do,
Mhm.
or this is what you have to do, or etc. And so I wish that I would not have taken that or made that commitment as young as I did. Because in that period of my life, as a man now, I look back in that period of my life and realize the kind of immaturity that I had. Because we talking about the man today, not the apostle.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
the man was immature.
Hmm.
You know, I've just come out of high school,
Hmm.
graduated, and there was no way I had everything that I needed to be a husband to anybody.
Hmm.
And that's just the reality.
Hmm.
And consequently, my immaturity and humanity showed up many times throughout the marriage. Yeah, with that answer.
So with that, what are some of the challenges that you experienced as a husband in marriage? Speaking to that immaturity and some of the things that were undone in you. Um, how was your marital journey?
Oh man, I think that it was an interesting journey in that I don't believe that either one of us were ready for marriage.
Mhm.
I think that we became vulnerable to the opinions of church people
Mhm.
and did what we thought was right at the time.
Mhm.
When in the back of our mind, we probably knew it would have been better to wait. And because of that, um, many mistakes. Learning how to be a provider
Mhm.
to a family at 18 or 19 years old.
Mhm.
And then not only that, but I'm trying to manage fatherhood, trying to learn what a spouse needs or a wife needs or what my
Mhm.
role is as a husband. I didn't have that growing up, so there was no model that I could model after. And I did everything blindly, and we had many challenges, financial challenges, um, infidelity in our marriage on both of our sides,
Mhm.
that we dealt with throughout the marriage. And even just the learning on how to handle each other
Mhm.
and how to deal with each other and what the covenant of marriage was. Because what I found out is you can be committed to the institution of marriage and not necessarily the covenant of marriage.
That's good.
And so I say that to say you'll stay married just to say you're married, but you won't practice the covenant of what it is to have a true marriage.
Mhm.
And so, but we had many challenges, financial challenges, infidelity. We had just learning each other and learning how. Then we had trying to work together in ministry. That added another thing on, how do we come in here after we done been in a knockdown, drag out fight on the way to
Mhm.
church, then cussed each other out,
Sure.
and then come in here and lead praise and worship. And so those were challenges, and I'm being fully transparent and
Sure.
authentic
Sure.
tonight because there are people out there who are pastors and preachers and whatever who face the same level. But we had many, many, many challenges. Um, Nothing. It got to a point where it got abnormal,
Mhm.
but most of the things that we dealt with are what normal marriages deal with, which is just learning each other, trying to figure out how we're going to make this work. And we did that amongst having one, two, three, four, then eventually five children, which created no room to really
Sure.
try to mesh ourselves.
Now, do you feel like you, at one point, were maybe more so married to the church than you were to your own wife? Do you feel like you that played a factor?
I do. I do. I think that there was a season where all I wanted to do was ministry. I'm talking. I was at church till 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and
Wow.
just came home when I was ready to come home.
Hmm.
And of course, that played a part in maybe her feeling neglected, or that this was more important than her, etc. Which can lead to other things and open up many doors. But yeah, I do agree that there was a point where my ministry was more important than my marriage.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, I'll say one thing and I'll be quiet. Is in my second year of my church anniversary, I invited a friend of mine to come and preach. And I was immature at the time, pastoring, but immature as a man. I had great revelation, though, but the man in me was struggling. And so the speaker told me that night, he looked at me dead in my face, and he said to me, "Your ministry is only going to be as strong as your marriage."
Mm.
And I rebuked it. I said, "You don't know what you're talking about. The devil is a lie," because I knew what we had been through and what we were facing in our marriage.
Hmm.
And I did not want to swallow the fact that my ministry strength was connected to my marriage because my marriage wasn't strong at the time.
Hmm.
You understand what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And so, the old folks say, if you just keep on living. And so
Hmm.
I kept on living and found out the truth of that statement.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. um, and you mentioned infidelity. I want to touch on a blog that came out about you some years back, 2016. And this blogger by the name of Mr. Obnoxious accused you of having an affair with a woman by the name of Shannon Dale. Can you, because
Powerful.
everybody shared this
Yeah, they
blog.
did. Yes, they did.
I mean, it went all over. It went worldwide, I believe, nationwide. It went.
Yeah.
Um, what was going through your mind when that happened? What What was
You,
your reaction when you first saw that?
you know what? I'm gonna tell you how I found out. There was a friend of mine in
Mm-hmm.
Florida, not Denver,
Mm-hmm.
in Florida, who
Wow.
said, "Hey, your name is in this blog. I just want to let you know what's going on." And so, um, it was tremendously disappointing and hurtful, because I've always been a person that all you have to do is tell the truth about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't even have to lie. There's enough wrong I've done in my truth that you don't have to make up no lies. So it was disappointing. It was very hurtful. It was a strain on our marriage at the time. It was a strain on the ministry. It was a strain on my mind. And it put me into a place where probably my first time that I dealt with depression,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to sit in the face of individuals who called themselves my friend or whatever they called me, who I know were chattering about me. I was table conversation all across the city and the world or whatever it may be. And then to know it was a lie, and to my true covenant brothers and friends, they were there for me. And I told them, I tell y'all the truth. If it happened, it happened. I'll tell the truth. I'm gonna apologize and I'm gonna move on. But that was just a complete lie, and it was hard. It was very, very hard for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember they had pictures of you, and somebody was impersonating you, talking as you to this woman.
Hmm.
But there was a twist to that maybe a year ago.
Hmm.
Tell us what happened.
It was, that was a difficult time. Just to shed a little bit of light on, we don't have to stay there too long, but to shed a little bit of light about what was going on. It got really bad to where that we were being sent pictures of our home, receiving death threats at the church,
Wow.
to the point we were on a vacation in Las Vegas, and the person who was managing this page, when we were in Las Vegas, all of a sudden changed their location to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Wow.
We got the Denver Police Department involved. There was a detective on the case.
Mm-hmm.
We were recording screenshots all the while. And I'm just going to be honest, as we're being transparent.
Mm-hmm.
All the while, in the back of this, and on the back behind the scenes, I was being threatened and trying to. They were trying to extort me for $5,000.
Now, this was the blog site that
This
was.
was the blog site that was
Wow.
trying to extort me. Um, And so a lot of people don't know about this because I've never talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about text messages every day, uh, telling me to call the attorneys and this, and I'll take it off the internet if you pay me $5,000. I won't mention this gospel artist name, but they had told me how they extorted another gospel artist for $10,000
Oh, Jesus.
just to get them to take this article. And my philosophy, it's out there now. So whoever gonna read it and make up their mind about it, they made up their
Sure.
mind. So it was extremely difficult, only to really find out. And I won't go into detail on how I found out. Only to find out that it was a friend of mine who I
Mm.
thought was a friend of mine. And I'm not talking about the person in the blog site. The person behind the person with the blog getting all of this information
Mm-hmm.
came from a person that I called a friend.
Wow.
And so it was just tremendous. It was a hard and difficult time in my life. But about a year ago, I received a message and I posted it on Facebook of this individual, and I don't even remember her name, but she wrote me an apology. Maybe a year and a half ago now, but she wrote me an apology and said that she impersonated me. She don't know why she did it.
Mm.
She didn't understand. And yeah, there's some crazy people out there, just to say the least. But she apologized and repented to me. I never responded to her, but I did take a screenshot of that and posted it on my
And
Facebook
I
page because
remember.
I know
Yeah.
many people were talking.
Oh, yeah.
And many people wanted it. People want the dirt about you and those kind of things. And so I was glad and I felt vindicated by God
Mm-hmm.
because I just let God handle that. It got to the point where the police department said, "There's nothing we could do."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "No, we got to do something." And I let God handle it, and He did.
Wow. You just faced so many challenges. How did you keep your focus?
It's easy to say God, and it's probably simple to say God, but that's my reality. I had God. And I had some strong people at some times in my life to be there for me and to continue to remind me of who I was and who God called me to be. One of the things that really encouraged my heart is through these transitions. I had a strong church who continued to show up, who continued to support, who continued to be there. Sure, there's a few people who fall off the way, you know, but I had a strong church and I had great people around me, some great people around me who would encourage me and push me to be who God called me to be. But it was very, I don't want to make light of any transition I've been through because it was extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, my biggest battle was mentally, to the point that you wrestle with who are you in the face of what they're saying about you? What do you even believe about yourself? And then what they're saying, it affects you. It may not be the truth, and it may not be something that you own, but it was difficult. And I've been through more than one blog situation. And so it just was difficult, and I had to lean on God and my faith and my trust in God and family,
Mm-hmm.
friends.
Now, unfortunately, this same blogger a year before um, had brought you up in another article um, concerning another individual who was in Denver at the time, who's openly gay. And this blogger accused or said that this person had pictures of you in their phone and that you were involved in this relationship. Um, what do you have to say about that?
Um, just a complete lie. Just a complete lie. And now that I think about it, it was that blog that my friend from Florida sent me.
Mhm.
But it just was a complete lie. It was so fictitious and so made up. It was just so random in the course of the blog, and then at the end of the blog, they stick my name in there. Like you did a whole blog about everything else, and then at the end, so it was just a lie.
Yeah.
There's no other way to address it. I did speak with the individual who was in the blog, and they didn't know who was behind it. I had an idea. There was no who I believe was behind it. I won't mention their person or anything, but I had an idea on who I thought was behind it because this person had been attacking me and my church privately before it got to this place publicly, and so it just was a lie. Um, I don't even know what to, other
What
than that.
what because I know there had to be a tremendous amount of pressure, anxiety with all these things going on. What kind of impact did that have on your family?
Great. I don't think it's. I mean, and we talk about the marital piece
Hmm.
is when being married to me was not easy
Hmm.
because of the level of attack that I had on my life. And so I can only imagine how she felt. Even when you wanted to, you desire to be your husband's greatest supporter or whatever, you know the whole city or world is talking about this, and this, and that. And so it played a huge, tremendous part in our marriage, I believe. And I think she suffered silently while she was trying to vocalize her support publicly to me or to people in front of people. But it affected us greatly. Um, and it affected me greatly. Just I had a time where I just don't want to be in front of people or go to other churches or accept engagements to preach because you don't know who's read the article, if
Sure.
they know it's, and your mind is going to tell you everybody's talking about you, and
Hmm.
et cetera. And so those were some of the very real things that I dealt with all while I was up here preaching, laying hands and doing all that I was doing. I was struggling, not necessarily within my identity because I knew who I was, but struggling with trying to carry the weight of the suffering that I had to go through
Hmm.
and not being understood and not having a safe place where I could go hide and heal, but just having to keep pushing and keep going and keep.
Now, you talked about earlier that you dealt with depression.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us a little bit more about that. What was that like for you?
The first time I really dealt with depression was the second blog. um, I was just inundated and overwhelmed by what was being said. I'm gonna tell you what happened. I was fine.
Hmm.
I said, let them talk. You know, I'm a pretty strong dude.
Hmm.
I don't really care about people's opinions that much, whatever. The blog was out there. It had been out for maybe about 2 weeks or so. And I didn't care. Let them talk, let them say whatever, let them do whatever. And then one night I went and read the blog.
Oh.
And then not only did I read the blog, but reading the blog didn't mess me up.
Hmm.
I'm gonna tell you what messed me up. I read the comments.
Oh.
And when I read the comments of people who didn't know me
Hmm.
trying to form an opinion about me, it broke me. It broke me
Wow.
to a point where I was in my bathroom in my basement and I just didn't want to live no more. That quick, the spirit of suicide came over my mind.
Hmm.
And I ended up going to the hospital that night and it was almost about midnight. I went to the hospital that night. My mother showed up, and all of them showed up later. And they called a therapist because there was not a therapist on watch because it was so late.
Hmm.
And I waited for about an hour, and this therapist came in. And she said, "I want you know, I wasn't supposed to work tonight. I wasn't supposed to be on call, but I came in for you." And I'm like, "You don't know me. I don't know you. What's going on up in here?" She's about maybe a 4'2" small little Caucasian lady.
Hmm.
She sat down in the chair and she asked me a couple questions. The first question she asked me was, "Who do you look like, your mom or your dad?" I said, "Well, I think I look like my mom more." And the second thing she asked me was to stand up. I stood up out of the hospital bed and I walked in front of the bed and there was this light that was on. And I stood there and as the light was shining, she pointed down to my shadow and she said, "Who is that?" And I didn't know what she meant. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, "Who is?" She said, "Who is that?" She said, "I don't know." She said, "What you're in a season right now is when you're trying to figure out how old and how immature your shadow is."
Mm.
And what will happen is if you don't address what is in your shadow,
Hmm.
then what is in your shadow will ultimately come in your life
My God.
at moments that you're excelling when you have not matured your shadow. Because even though I was at the time maybe 26, 25, my shadow was probably 10 years old or 15 years old
Mm.
or 16 years. And so that shadow, when it's not addressed, will come in your life. And so that was the first time. And then immediately I'm like, oh, the Holy Ghost is up in here. He just sent this woman for me. And he just sent this woman for me. to give me a word, and the Lord just immediately jerked my mind back, and
My God.
it was just that quick. But I've dealt with it even since then, in the last season and stuff like that. But it's tremendous, and I know many people in ministry in the
Sure.
church who deal with depression.
And even talking about that, what is your perspective on mental health in church?
Yeah, I think the church has to invest in counselors, certified counselors, and then if not having the budget to employ certified counselors, must invest in spiritual advisors, people who can be there
Sure.
to advise, and even if it needs to go to another level to do that, the church cannot any longer ignore the reality of mental illness. Um, and when I say that, it comes from diagnosis to, just to dealing with depression. And it may be a season of depression, not necessarily a lifetime. But if you don't handle a season of depression, it will become part of who you are. And I think the church has to, we have to address it.
Do you take care of yourself?
Um, Now I'm doing better at it. Before, no. Everything was about everybody else. And being pulled in so many different areas. And everybody wants something different from you. And you're doing your best to be everything. Paul said, desire to be all things to all men. So I did my best to be everything everybody want me to be, and in a sense, lost myself. When I say that, I lost the care of myself. And but I do it better. I've had to convince myself that it's not selfish to take care of me. It's not selfish to make sure I'm good, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically and all
When did you reach the place that the opinions of people no longer affected you?
that.
Was that later on?
It I've never really cared about what people think. I think what I wrestled with more was not allowing myself to uh, be. I'm nosy. Help us, Holy Ghost. I'm nosy, and so like what messed me up was reading the comments. And so, and it wasn't like I cared, but I think it was a gradual process where you begin to mature. And the more confident I became in who I was, the less I was affected by who they were saying I was. Does that make sense? So the more confident I became in, I know who I am, I know what I do, I know the mistakes I've made and what I didn't make. So I cannot allow their assumptions about me to affect what I feel about myself. And gradually it became. And so certainly in the last season, it strengthened in the last season.
My God, you've
Yeah.
had quite a journey,
It's been
quite a
quite a journey.
cost for you.
It's been quite a journey. And this is the first time I really felt led or compelled by the Holy Spirit to really open my mouth and tell people what I've been through. I think it's so easy to look at somebody like me and to see, me in the blogs or whatever they do, and to see a glimpse of something that is a reality, or that is an assumption or whatever, and make up your mind about somebody when you don't even know those individuals. And one of the great things I just wanted to do was to share the truth about what ministry's like and going through and the cost of being. Because if I was a regular person, they wouldn't be writing blogs about me. When I say regular person, if I wasn't in ministry or preaching or that kind of stuff, they wouldn't be worried about me. But it's because of the title. So I would strongly encourage myself, all of those people, when we see people's misfortune in a sense in the tabloids or in the blogs, don't share it, don't participate in it, pray. We everybody trying to get their latest tea.
Yeah, that's true.
That we don't realize those are real people living in the moment of what's going on. So yeah, it's been a call, it's been a journey.
Do you worry about backlash with being so transparent and sharing your testimony, people taking your words and twisting them? Because this internet is
Oh,
the devil.
it mean it's
It
the
is the devil.
full
People
devil.
can take a clip of one thing you said and just twist it and
Absolutely.
just take it on. And we saw it happen with Kim Burrell in her
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
Somebody was videoing what she
At her
said. It went all
church.
around the world. But the backlash, do you ever think about that? That what could come with being so transparent
I've
and
considered
open?
it. I've considered it, but the reality, and I've considered it because of the level of viciousness that came after me in the last season, and we'll eventually talk about that later. But um, I've considered it, but I know that this is ministry to me. This is what I'm doing right now is equivalent to what I did yesterday when I preached a sermon, because my desire through doing this is to pour into people and to let you know that, listen, you listening to somebody who's faced several bouts of depression, who has faced struggles in my identity when I was younger, struggles in what I but thought about myself, what other people thought about me, struggles in my marriage, struggles in my ministry, all that. But I've come out a stronger person. So while I do, consider the backlash, the Holy Spirit has released me to do this.
Absolutely.
And so He is my guide and my comforter. And if they do it, they do it. But this time I get to control the narrative.
That's right.
They don't get to spend 10 days lying. So we're not
Absolutely.
going to do it. There's some questions I'll go ahead and take.
All right.
It says, was it just your season that made you start doing better with taking care of yourself? What I realized is this, that had I took better care of myself, and when I say better care of myself, I mean mental care, spiritual care, even physical care, and even emotional care. If I took better care of myself, in those areas, some of my pitfalls could have been avoided. Some of the things I wrestled with could have been avoided. But because I did not take care of myself, then I think that's consequently why some of the things happened in my life. But yeah, so that's what made me start really saying I better take care of myself.
Now, they say, that's called self-neglect. And, when you reject yourself, and sometimes when you're on the platform, you're doing ministry. I mean, not just the platform, but just doing ministry. Sometimes you forget to take time. And I'll just throw this in there. I do know that I believe it was what 8, 9 years before you even had a vacation.
Yeah, yeah,
At some point that you
yeah.
had to say to yourself, that's not
That's
healthy.
not normal.
That's not normal. That's not
I
good.
needed a time to reflect. Every pastor, young preachers, if y'all out there, listen. Every pastor needs a time to break away from the ministry and take care of yourself. I think we were in 9 years. Was it 9 years?
9.
Maybe 8 or 9 years that I took a month off, and that was good. And even at the same time, it was good. I was so lost because I didn't know what to do
My God.
because that's all I had done.
Brandon Barrett says, how do you continue to move forward after knowing that the people who you called friends kicked you while you were down?
Almighty God. Let me say, God, I'm called to this.
Yeah.
I'm so called to this. And I don't say that arrogantly, but I say it confidently. I have been graced to survive the darts of the enemy. I have been graced to survive the malicious attacks of immature people who call themselves believers. And so, because I'm called to it, God gives me a grace of survival, and I will never give up, and I will never stop, and I will never throw in the towel. I don't care what lie, blog, whatever I don't, not even my own folly, not even my own mistakes, because I'm human, and I will make a mistake, and I will have a down day, and I will have a day where my flesh gets the best of me. But not even that will make me abandon what I'm called to do. I am so called to this. There's nothing else that God has ordained or called me to do except to fulfill the mandate that's upon my life. So, with that said, I have gotten very selective about who I allow in my inner circle.
That's good.
I have gotten extremely selective because you have to.
That's just it.
You just have to.
Yeah.
I'm very selective about the term bro because I've been broed by people who infringed on my marriage behind the scenes. I've been broed by individuals who were standing right here, handing me my water and my towel, and at the same time winking at my wife. So I've been broke
My
by
God.
individual. Oh, we're gonna be transparent. If we're gonna do it, we
Listen.
just gonna do it. I've been broke by individuals who were broing me in public on Facebook in front of people, and then behind the scenes having malicious parties to tear me down and to tear my character down and stuff. So I don't use. I love Apostle Stephen, and he said, "Don't bro me till you know me." And so, because I believe brotherhood is a term of covenant, I don't take that. I don't take it lightly no more. So anybody that I call bro or brother, it is a sign and an indication to them that I am in covenant with you, which means don't burn me, don't do me, and I won't. You understand?
Now, one of those things that happened where there was a well-known prophet. Now, I don't know if you want to go into detail about it, that you went to this service and made a pass at your wife, nationally known.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that it's just due to immaturity. His immaturity at the time, and it was a difficult time. Well, not really difficult because we maneuvered that. Myself and her maneuvered through that well, and so that was one of the first things that was shocking to me because I adored this dude. I loved his ministry, his preaching, and everything, and so then that happened, and so it took me back a little bit, and then I had to minister to him in his inbox, and and handle that the way that I did, and let me say, it happened. I want to put some context on this
Sure.
because it happened to both of us. Just as much as they were coming at her, they were coming at me. And sometimes we handled it well, and then sometimes we didn't handle it well. I have in no way been perfect in my marriage and have many times fallen short and many times made mistakes that I wish I didn't make and all that kind of stuff. Which I think creates a culture in your marriage that you have to be very careful of. And so, we went through that and went through a whole bunch of other stuff. But covenant and friendship is really is key to me now, and I think you just have to be selective about who you allow in your personal space. He did eventually apologize.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
and yeah,
How do you deal with the apology that you never got or that you may never get?
you know what? The Lord told me that I'm going to train you, and this is going to be good for somebody out there. I'm going to train you how to forgive without the apology. Now, that was critical for me because what that taught me was that God was going to give me the grace to accomplish something that I thought was impossible. I didn't want to forgive. Matter of fact, I wanted to hold on to whatever it was until I recognized that what I was holding on to was killing me. And I know we struggle as a people, humanity, with forgiveness and forgiving people who've done you wrong, who have hurt you, who've abandoned you, who have maliciously attacked you or whatever. And I didn't want to forgive until the Holy Spirit took me in a school one day and he told me that, and I preach it a lot now, the power of decision. You don't have to feel like forgiving somebody. You have to decide to forgive them.
My God.
And when you decide to forgive them, then God will give you the grace to stand in the decision that you made. And what seemingly was impossible then becomes possible. Because, and I'm telling you, not what I just believe theologically or spiritually, I've done it. I've forgiven what I thought I would never, ever let go of. It had happened so quickly for me that on a Wednesday night, I was sitting around talking to my brother, my mother, and my friend, and we're having this conversation. I told him, I'm not forgiven. It's not that I wanted to hold on to it. It's just that I didn't know how to let it go. And so, and by that Friday, the Lord had processed on me so hard and been on me overnight in dreams and visions and stuff. And he don't speak to me in dreams, so I know when he's talking to me in dreams, I'm being hard-headed. And so he caught my heart and my soul and pushed me into a place of forgiveness until it manifested. And it was difficult, but very freeing at the same time. And I did not know how I was trying to preach through toxicity and live through the toxicity of that unforgiveness until the Holy Spirit freed me from it. And it happened just like this.
My God. Now, before you get to that place of forgiveness, I'm sure you were in a place or you sat in a place of anger, of
Oh God.
rage.
Oh Lord.
How were you?
Oh Father.
How 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 were you navigating through anger and rage and your humanity?
Because
How
that's what
were
we're
you?
talking about today.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about because, and we thank God that you got to that place to make the decision to forgive. But if you could just go and sit back in that place where you were angry, where you were raged, maybe you felt like you wanted to just, you know.
Oh man, it was very hard. I felt every emotion that you could ever feel. Anger, very much so. Felt rage, sadness. I'd have good days and bad days, and how I managed that humanity. Um, it depended on the day. Some days I did good,
Yeah.
and some days I did extremely horrible. I may not have said it to their face, but I cussed several people out.
Well,
Pray for me. Um, but and then I just had to get to a place that what was I so angry about, and why was I so angry about it, and what really was it about what I was feeling that I wanted vindication. Well, God gonna do that in the end, and I wasn't gonna put myself back into the same situation I was in. So eventually, I just said it's just not worth it no more.
sure.
It's just not worth it
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah.
I went through all of them feelings. Um, yeah, I went through every feeling of anger and rage, and um, just my emotions were everywhere, just extra everywhere, and it
My
wasn't
God.
good.
My God. Well,
I know we got a few.
yeah, let me see. Do you feel it's necessary for pastors to see a therapist at least once a month since you all take on so much from the people?
I do. I advise everybody, not even just pastors, but if you're in ministry, and not even just in ministry, in life, there's people in life who have a lot to carry and a lot to balance. And so I advise you, if you need to go see a therapist, there is nothing wrong. And we had to break that stigma in African American culture because we were trained and raised up on what happens in this house stays in this house. But the reality is, if what is happening in this house is hurting me and diminishing who I am, that I have a right to talk and a right to counsel. And so I encourage you, please go see it. It helped me. I see somebody about once a week, and just talking helped me. I had kept so much in for years that now I'm just sitting up in that chair and talking to her, and it's a release that happens
Yeah.
through just being able to communicate what you're going through, and what you feel. So yes, I do, not only for pastors but anybody who needs it.
How do you know that you've taken sufficient time to heal before relaunching a new ministry?
Good. That was a question that many people were concerned about last year when I start preaching again in January. What happened last year is I took the latter part of last year off. Wasn't preaching. If I came to church, I may sing a little song or led some worship. But I took the latter part of last year and addressed the man. Counseling, got myself into arenas and healthy people around me who could pour into me, and who could assist me in that place of transition. And so then at the beginning of this year in January, I came back and began preaching again. But I tell you what I did during the time that I was off was to make sure that when I got back in it, I would not get back in it with the same mindset or behaviors that I had when I took off. When I took off.
Absolutely.
In other words, there are systems and mechanisms that I put in place in ministry to ensure that I never get to that place again. Number one, I have someone to talk to, a therapist that I see weekly. Secondly, the burden of the ministry is spread. It's not all on me no more. And not only that, but I've taken time to make sure that I learned a little bit about who I am. And am still in that process. I'm still in the process of learning Ryan again and learning how to love me, take care of me, at the same time being faithful to my call. And so, as far as related to the question, how do I know that I've taken sufficient time to heal? I think that my healing process started last year and probably will continue the next couple of years. God has immediately healed me from some things, and then some of them have been gradual healing. Not because it's not His will, but I'm bracing myself to receive the totality of His healing, because I've learned that healing is painful
Yeah, absolutely.
because it touched the wound of, the scar.
Yeah.
And so, and then most of everything I do is spirit led. I seek godly wisdom and counsel, and I seek the Holy Spirit. Father, what do you want me to do? What is your will for me? What is your desire for this ministry? What do you want me to do next? And so everything is God led. In no way am I saying that I am completely healed from the last season, but in no way do I think that it's an excuse to abandon the call.
Sure.
I think that you just have to be more mature and put measures in place to make sure you never get back to the place that you were, which is accountability.
More grace.
Grace and more grace. So
I believe I don't see any more questions.
there was one question earlier. It says, advice do you give to someone who is trying to start up their own ministry? Run. Make sure that you are called to it. Don't do it just because you want to be recognized. Don't do it because you want to be a pastor. Make sure that you're called to it, especially if you're going to pastor in Denver, Colorado. Make sure that you are called to it. This place has a way of, it's really a desert place. And I've seen through the history of Denver, great and mighty evangelistic voices and prophetic voices have been through this city. None of them have ever stayed. This city is not cultured to handle apostolic ministry. And so really, when you say you're a founder and you're about to start a church, what you're saying is that you've been graced for the apostolic, because apostolic people are trailblazers. We blaze paths and trails that other people are afraid to go on. So if it's not on your life, if you're not called to it, if it's just something that some zeal, settle that, temper it down, and you better make sure you're called to it. If you are called to it, be released by a father. Be released by a spiritual father, and let that connection feed you as your pastor. There are dangers to not being pastor or fathers.
You ever thought about packing up and getting out of here and
Absolutely.
leaving this region?
Absolutely. We got another couple more questions. But yeah, look, I'm telling you, make sure that you are called to do it. Make sure you're called to do it.
I'll take one more question. You want to take one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a spiritual mentor or person who you trust to give you the hard no when it's required?
Yeah. My several, I'll have maybe a couple. One of them is my bishop, who we talked a little bit about last week, Bishop John Brennan, who has been instrumental, really, really instrumental in being a spiritual father to me, who knows that he has the permission to require anything of me, and I'm going to be a son and do it. But yeah, I think for me, and I had this question with one of my staff members the conversation, one of my staff members on Saturday, is I needed people in my life who would not be yes men.
Yeah.
Who would see, and because church folk will see you about to fall, and then when you fall, say, I told you so. When in reality, if you saw me going down, you should have said something. And so, yeah, I receive correction and mentorship from Bishop and from other voices in my life, or even around the world, that I lean and depend on for truth and honesty and advice and just counsel, period. I don't think I'm above anybody.
True.
I think one of the reasons that guided me through many of this is I've always been integral and accountable. I don't, if I mess up, I'm the first one to come and say, "Hey, y'all, I didn't messed up. Pray for me." And I believe that it's critical that every pastor have people in your life who have, not everybody. And I know when I say this, I've told this to my staff. So I mean, I'm gonna say it. That's gonna be our last question. We at it. I'm gonna say it, but and I hope when I say it, it's understood. Everybody has not earned the right to disagree with me.
That's good.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it
So
makes sense. That's good.
because you can't come and try to mentor me, and you don't know the amalgam of the makeup of who I am, or we haven't established that kind of. So I think that there are certain people who have earned the right to disagree with me. My spiritual fathers, my mentor. Now that doesn't mean that if you have a problem or something's going on that you can't disagree with me, or that we can't have the. I'm talking about in the place of correction, or that kind of place,
Sure.
or instruction, or you know what I'm saying, where it's like that. I think that it's received better when it comes to a flow of covenant relationship.
That's good.
I don't know if that just made sense to everybody.
That's good.
Because it's easy
That made
to
a lot
hear
of
that
sense.
and to misunderstand what I'm saying. I am no way saying I'm above disagreement or people disagree with me. I'm talking about when it comes to somebody who's got to pull my coattail and snatch me and correct me, that has to flow through relationship.
And that's so important that you have those people around you. And this has been an awesome part two
Yes.
tonight.
Yes.
So I want to thank you again for being so transparent with us.